Hi, you're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore.
Hey, welcome to Boggy Talk. We hope that you are doing well, and I can't wait to dive into what we're talking about today, a little game we're playing, and some questions and answers. But before I do that, Dudette.
Before I do that.
Hey, Dudette.
Before I do that.
Speaking of the opposite of Dudette, James,
man.
how you doing, buddy?
I'm great.
Man.
Really great.
Really great. Because
Yes.
kids are back in school, and
Yeah, but I'm tired.
it's all.
I'm already tired.
The early mornings, man.
Yeah,
Not just early mornings.
Evening activities.
yes.
So like I got to get up early and just tired.
It's a perpetual.
I'm getting
state
old.
of- yeah,
I'm getting old. I'm not in my 40s like you, but I am
You're
old.
almost there. Almost there. Well,
How are you?
I'm the same. Like, oh man, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I think part of it is the fact that our dog, which I love. I didn't think I would like having a dog, and I love him until he wakes up at 4:30 every morning, and I'm like, just stop barking.
Is he a puppy?
He is a puppy, so he'll grow out of it.
Yeah,
all
about
those
2 years it
things.
gets
Yeah.
better. About 2 years it gets better.
It'll be okay, and he's cute, and it's fun. It's wonderful for the family, but right now it's
Ours
kind of
isn't
killing
cute,
me.
but he's sweet now.
Yeah.
Took 2 years.
So all you pet people who are, I wouldn't say we're necessarily pet people, but we do it for our children, and we enjoy
For the
he's cute. That's right.
children.
It's for
and
the
the
children.
children.
Speaking of children, let's dive into our topic for the day.
Headline, hot topic. What do
Headline,
we call it?
hot
It's not really
topic.
hot.
It's not a hot topic because people are like, that's
No.
not like.
Yeah,
'cause-
yeah.
So just to remind
Today's
you.
juicy.
So sometimes we're pulling from what's going on in the world, headlines, things we should talk about. Sometimes it's church issues, things going on in the greater church. Sometimes it's just, hey, we need to talk a little bit more about this specific thing that's going on in our church. And that's what we're going to do today.
And we're only trying to spend 10 minutes on it, right?
Only trying to spend 10 minutes. So we're
So-
trying to be succinct.
That's good. We don't talk fast, so we need to talk fast.
Yeah, we should talk faster.
Well, what is it today, Justin?
So today we are talking about really discipling our children.
Okay,
This is
okay.
building off of really where we've been in our intergenerational series the past 2 weeks specifically. I think the sermons have been very focused and directed in this direction. And I think as you listen, as people have, the feedback we've had is like it's, you're teaching the word. It sounds so funny to be like, sometimes when you're talking about a sermon, like people have been like, that was great because you're talking about like the sermon, but really the word is good.
The word is
He is
good.
faithful,
Yeah,
and so we're
yeah.
trying to just teach what
And
Scripture
James
say.
didn't completely mess up communicating it,
That's how I
so
feel.
there is conversation started.
That's how I feel in worship, leading worship sometimes. I'm like, well, the song is great. Hopefully we do okay. But
Yeah.
the team always does.
That's true. That's good.
I think what we want to talk about now is maybe a little bit more of okay, so what does this actually look like in
Yeah.
real life? And
Yeah.
I would say, first, we're not experts because we're still in the middle of this. And I think a lot of
Speak
this
for yourself.
yeah. Well, I would say,
We're experts in theory.
there's a lot of
We're not
and there's-
experts in practice.
and there's a lot of theories out there about what
Yeah.
it looks like. I would just say the first thing is regardless of what it looks like, be committed to it. Like, I think
Okay.
that's
All
like,
right.
the
All right.
first thing
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
everyone thinks it's just like an Instagram, like, oh, I want to look like that. I want to look like them, be like that. Hey, it may not look exactly like in your family, like it's going to look in another
That's right.
family, as
Yeah,
long
yeah.
as you are committed
Yeah.
to making it work for your family. That's principle number one. And you
Can I
take it
push
from
back
there.
on principle number one?
Push back.
What if it's not working?
What if it's not working?
What if like
Just
6 months in?
pivot?
Okay, all right.
I mean, really. So I would say when our kids, like I had this ideal of what it would be like with our family that we were just
You
going
read a Piper book or?
Yeah, and that
Yeah, yeah.
every Monday night we were going to sit down as a family, and it was just going to be this serious, like, children, you're going to listen to what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Oh, you were into Vodi Bakum heavily.
Well, no, because I have a
I'm just
funny
kidding.
story.
I'm
I don't
just
have
gonna
time to
throw-
tell a story
Okay.
about that particularly that I'm like, with that
Yeah,
when
yeah.
I have like a
I just
cringe.
offended people. Dude,
yeah.
if you even question.
You can ask me. I don't want to say. You could ask me personally my story
Yeah.
about that. So,
Okay.
it doesn't need to go online. Secondly, I would just say you've got to figure out what it looks like. The ideal is that you're doing something that meets your needs of your kids, that engages them, that is teaching them. And for us, we found like with the age range we have,
Reading the Jesus Calling Bible, you just
no, that we just, or we got to talk through the word.
trying
We
to
gotta
figure out
pray.
how many people I can offend. You just keep
That
talking. I'll just keep throwing out
ding,
offenses.
ding. The number's just, we're going to keep a counter at the bottom of the video. Ding. Every time you're doing somebody's offended. But really like, hey, we're going to talk through the scripture. We're going to talk about what they're learning in classes and discipleship here at church, because that's a great bridge home.
Great.
Ask them questions about it. And really like, hey, let's read this. We're reading this passage.
Yeah.
What do you think? So
That's
go
good.
ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that you read the Gospel Coalition every morning, and whatever they say, you completely
You just
alter
do
your
it.
life around
That's
based
right.
on whatever article or
Yeah.
hot fad is there, because they're not trying to keep people engaged in a business, even though they are.
Right.
So I'm just kidding. So I was just trying to offend another group, but yeah,
assault with that.
I think what you're saying, like, you kind of plug along. Like, I think that we are often, you've heard people talk about coaching and things like this. Like, people want the outcome, but not the process. And like, that's so parenting. Like,
Right.
it is the process, it is, I don't want to sound all, new agey, but it is the journey. Like, and the journey actually has a destination though. That's,
That's
where
right.
I would
It's not just
criticize
a
someone.
winding road to
It's all
nowhere.
about the experience. It's
No.
like, okay, well, your experience could lead you to a bad place, but yeah, it's plugging along. It's being willing to call audibles, to adjust. I think most importantly is the relationship piece,
Yeah.
To me, the concern would be if my children are less inclined to talk to me about how they're feeling. So something we try to do every day is a high and a low. So especially if we're at the dinner table, but even if we're not at the dinner table that night, like, hey, tell me a high and a low today, because I'm getting to hear my children's heart, what matters to them. And I just think it's keeping them in the discipline of being willing to share, to recognize God's goodness and negative. And then we try to memorize scripture.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and it's just, I might celebrate something on social media every once in a while, but I'm not going to like put like, hey, today one of my kids threw a tantrum during our time of talking about the Bible. Like, I love them too much to do that, but that does happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if it's not a tantrum, it's like somebody just punched someone, or someone just let one rip, and now you just lost everyone because it's. I think in those moments, like when something silly happens, like you have to lean into it and laugh with them. I think
somebody farts almost every time we have family share time,
every mealtime too. I'm like, guys, come on! Like
Yes.
it's just I grew up with brothers, so it's
Christy does not like when they do that. Like we're not supposed to do that around her.
Oh yeah,
like,
it is a big deal.
Yeah, anyway,
absolutely. I think
that's
rightfully so.
awkward.
I think going back, it is you do have to like really lean into where your kids are. Every kid's different in terms of what they can understand, different age, but also personality. So going back to high and the low, I think that's a great, and we asked that a lot too. I think I picked that up from you because it's a great way to frame things. But don't be discouraged if like after a week of doing this, your child isn't just pouring out their heart, or if you're getting the I don't know. Like some kids are just going to do that, and I just would say continue and persist, and they are going to eventually share. Yeah. I think you have to model this too,
right?
Because I think I realized at one point my kids are kind of clueless about everything I do during the day, and they don't need to know every detail, but they're like, when I started sharing a high and a low from my day, they were like, oh, like our parents actually, when I'm not around, they do things, but it helps them understand how I'm processing the world, how I also get upset over something, and sometimes it's silly and I shouldn't have gotten upset, or you've got to model that
because they believe that Truman Show thing we talked about. Remember when we talked about that?
That's right.
You kind of think everyone's really just an actor waiting to
in my show. That's right.
That's right.
And then take the opportunity to like turn things back to the heart. Okay, well, if they're like, hey, it was so bad when this happened at school today. Well, why? Why did that make you feel that way? Ask them, how did that make you feel? Well, why do you think that? And then pray about it. So we're also teaching our kids to like, to pray through these things, pray through their day, pray through what they're thinking, what they're feeling, all in light of the scripture.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think that, a lot of things in life, I turn back to what the scripture says about those things. And the way that you can do that is by knowing the scripture. And I know that almost sounds like condescending, but I just think so many and I think in one of our questions we'll have, I'm going to get to this too. I just think so many Christians have these like, I want to be X, or I want my life to look like X. And they don't want to do the like daily disciplines of being in the Word and being in prayer and examining our own heart and being a servant in the church. Like the truth is, like, if the journey matters, the process matters, like who we are is way more important than what we're doing actually and where we're doing it. And I think who we are transcends that. And then ultimately what we're doing is we're reproducing that in our children because they're probably not going to do a lot of things the same way you do those things.
Right.
Maybe a little bit because of our culture and maybe a little bit just because how things are. But like in some ways they're going to do it the opposite of you, even if you're doing a great job.
That's right.
But they are going to reproduce the character,
right?
Or they're going to rebel to the character. But I think if they're loving and accepted, they're going to reproduce the character. And I think my children know that I love them. And I would say this too. I say the same thing. I've been a dad for 14 years. I say the same things consistently to them. I honor every time they get in trouble. Hey, no matter what you do, I will never stop loving you.
Right.
Hey, I tell them often, like even my big kids, and I think they probably think it's cheesy, but like, hey, dude, would I ever trade you for anything in the world?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not trying to be funny. I would really love $1 billion. I would do a lot for $1 billion.
Yeah.
I truly wouldn't give up my children for $1 billion. Isn't that crazy that they're that valuable to me?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of money, but you're like, no way. Like their life
like they
is
need to
precious.
Hear that.
And they because they're processing like, I would do this. I would.
They're like, I'll probably sell you for $1 billion.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, you buy me.
I mean, if somebody said you could have $1 billion, and never mind, I'm going to go.
Yeah. That's our game next week. What would you do for $1 billion? Yes or no? I wouldn't do that.
I want to be a billionaire.
Oh man, I think. Something you said.
We got about a minute.
We got a minute left. So
yeah.
I think another piece of this goes back to the modeling piece. And you said this in the sermon 2 weeks ago about how important it is that our kids see us acting out in our faith, but acting out our faith.
Yeah.
And I think a huge piece of that is our commitment to serve the church, and to be in community with other people and to be disciplers. They need to see us not just discipling other people, but involved in other people's lives and part of making disciples, because then it becomes a natural rhythm of their life. And I think we, for a long time hosted a Bible study on Wednesday nights, like late, and our kids would get mad because they were in bed and it was loud because it was like college students, and and they would be like, "Why are they so loud?" We're like, well, we understand, and we'll tell them to be quiet, but here's why we're doing this. And they became like, they just expected it, and they actually, like, it's important for them to see us doing this. So I would just say, model it, be in each other's lives, and also as your kids get older, if you don't have older kids yet, like teenagers, you begin to see more and more and more just the incredible value of them having other trusted voices.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, I
encourage that.
I think we try our best to be good fathers. We're insufficient because we're not perfect. But there's so many things that they pick up from other men, other women who they just see things in a different light, encourage in a different way. And they're also at the stage where outsiders' opinions of them do matter a lot to them, and it's incredibly valuable. I know we're over time, but I was going to say, I think notice that we really didn't give you a lot of specifics about how to structure this time, because I really don't think they matter that much. It was funny because we tried like family devotion, and it really just wasn't working that well. And you have a big age range too.
I recently listened to Barnabas Piper on the Glass House, a Lifeway podcast, who's John Piper's son, and then the Mandrells, who he runs Lifeway, he's been a church planter, and they were just talking about that they really, specifically for families that are like involved in the church, they're like, family devotion time is just kind of lame. Like, it doesn't mean you're not talking about the word, you're not having conversations, but like this formal sit down, like, and I think if it's really, and there's people who dogmatically approach that differently, and that's fine. It's working for them. I'm not saying it's wrong, but for us, that just hasn't been something that has worked well.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
agree. So
I wanted to defend another group.
that's right. Ding.
Okay.
There's the bell.
All right, questions.
So questions related to this. We're gonna do things differently than we did last week. So we're gonna go into our questions that we've received, and then we're gonna close out with our game. But you need to stick around for the game because I think it's gonna be really funny.
Or if life isn't about a game to you, then just sign off in about 5 minutes.
Let's talk about some questions. First question we've got is this. And it's related to what we've been really emphasizing as a church with intergenerational and discipleship. What do you do if your children are hard-hearted or don't seem to be responding to what you're trying to teach?
So first and foremost, pray.
Yes.
I'm very practical. And we're very practical, and our church is very practical, and I think a lot of people in this area are very practical. And I just think people are often very practical. Give me the 3 steps. Jesus said of the one boy who was sick, this could only happen by healing and by praying.
Yeah.
And so if we know that there are some things that only prayer will work for, then why don't we start with the thing that we know is the most powerful? And so
that's so true.
I pray for my children, but specifically, I think I'm burdened to pray in specific ways for my children when I see this kind of stuff. So I would say, number 1, pray.
I agree, and it's ironic that like Jesus tells us to do this, and that's usually like, oh yeah, after we've read books and after we've talked to people, and God can use all those things. Then we're like, oh, and we got to pray first. I agree. We actually were talking about that specific passage a few months ago, just in something we were praying through for one of our kids. We're like, all right, we've just got to the Lord has to do this. The Lord has to do this. I think you are absolutely right. Pray. I think 2, endure, be patient. I think if you pause for a moment, you will recognize in your own heart times where you've been hard-hearted and times you were being hard-hearted. And God doesn't leave his children alone. He disciplines us in terms of in a father's and loving way, and he is working. Now, if they're hard-hearted towards him in terms of not receiving, I think, what I'm talking about is a child who's, a believer. If they're not a believer, I would say be patient and endure. Continue to make opportunities. You do feel like you have to walk this tension of you can't force anyone to change, but you certainly can be loving, holding to the truth, patient, listening, and create. I think especially with kids, younger kids, and in teenage, so much of it goes back to what we just talked about is the relationship, and you've got to lay that groundwork before they will listen.
So that was what I was going to say. Is I think that the third thing. So we got prayer, patience. I need a pee for this, but is proximity.
There you go.
Christy and I were talking about one of our children and their just issues, but then I was explaining they still talk to me about these issues, and even though I think they're not handling all the things wrong, they're talking to me, and Christy was saying it kind of seems like they're using you, and I'm like, yes, maybe, but they still feel comfortable talking to me. And I think that's so valuable. About this, they're not I'm going to my room, I'm, whatever. And I just think that's important. I think when I think about ministry, not just in our homes, that's such an important piece of ministering to people, making it clear, I'm not closing the door on you.
Yeah.
Now you might close the door on me, but I'm not closing the door on you. Right. Now I know, and sometimes there's manipulative relationships, and that's different. That's not what I'm speaking to. But when I think of, and I know we can theologically debate this, but when I think of God, drawing us to him, the scriptures just seem to point out, God is not slow, God, God's patient, God puts people in a time and place that might seek him, though he's not far away. So many people have said it felt like I was running from God, and he was always there. I just think there's something about fostering whatever you can do, as far as it depends on you, to be at peace with all men and your daughters and sons. So proximity is not the right word.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You just have to be.
But proximity, you don't do that without proximity.
Exactly.
So, you know.
I think that's all good. There's probably more we could say. I think a lot of times we. And when it gets like this in a situation, we start to operate a lot more out of fear than out of faith, and I know that sounds very Hobby Lobby like, but we,
another offense.
but it's true. We start to panic, like, oh gosh, if I don't fix my kid,
I know.
The Lord will do the work.
Yeah,
and out of that fear, we then start to sometimes inappropriately give them too much space and let our kids call the shots. And that's where people are like, well, I'm not going to force them. And this leads us to a second question, but that's also where you're like, oh, well, and we look for other things to blame. Like, well, it's their life group. They just don't connect with their other students or kids, or it's the church. And then you try another church and you're like, So
I think something that needs to be said here is there's a difference between a hard-hearted kid and a 13 to 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Because 13 to 18-year-olds, and I was
even
one.
the best.
And they will not like if you say this.
Yeah.
But teenagers lack judgment. Yeah. They do. I mean, that's like a philosophy. I understand. Teenage brain is real.
Yeah. They're not fully developed.
They're not, but they're so.
But they think they are. And I thought I was too, and you did too.
They're good at arguing. Like,
yeah.
And I do think stay in the course. And like, again, I think we alluded to last week, back to like, do I want to go to church? Do you make your kids go to church? All that stuff. Like, I say all the time, this is what we're going to do. It's my responsibility to shepherd you while you're in my house. When you're 18, you make your own decisions. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't have like serious issues about that, but you know, I've already decided in my mind, if they push back on something that we're doing as a family, that's the conversation. Like, you are my responsibility to God. Mm-hmm. I mean, God. Yeah, I'm responsible to God for you.
Yeah, so. That's good. So this really does lead into the next question, and you just alluded to it, and you mentioned this 2 weeks ago in the sermon, but should you force your teenagers to go to church if they really don't want to? And I think part of this is that going back to that, like, they're coming from a place of, I don't want to force it on them and cram down their throat, all those things. So thoughts? I know your thoughts, but you say,
I mean, that's a whole Boggy Talk episode, but yes.
Yeah.
But there's so much. So A, you should be kind.
Yes. Don't
you
be
should be
judgy.
Kind.
Yeah.
B, I think this is my observation from most families. Most families where the parents are spending time with the Lord and they regularly go to church, I don't see this as a problem. Mm-hmm. I do see this as a problem in families where the father and mother, they go to church when it's convenient, half the year, whatever. And so it is a regular option to not go to church. And so then their children don't understand, well, how come when you don't want to go to church, we don't have to go?
That's a great point.
But when I don't want to go, we don't have to go. And I would just say, so you need to change that. You know, it's like, seriously, I'm not trying to be funny, but so we can miss it for travel sports, or we can miss it because we're going to go on a 3-day weekend on a regular basis, you know. Yeah. But we can't miss it when I got a lot of homework and I don't feel good and all that. Or we miss it for homework, you know. And again, like, you got to go back and say, okay, we're going to go every time we can, unless there's some big reason. And if you're like starting over and they're bringing that up, you just got to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, you know what? I haven't prioritized it like we should, but we are now.
Yeah, we're going to start over. And that's, that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
When we as parents say, hey, you know what? You're right. I've been hypocritical about this, or I've had a double standard and it's wrong. And we're changing course now. And that speaks powerfully to kids.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. You know, I think it's challenging for our, one believer homes. Mm-hmm. That is challenging.
Yeah.
And I think,
it is. Yeah.
You need to, that's probably more of a insistent, but not, forceful, because, you just may not, your spouse may not support you in that. Mm-hmm. And so pray in that regard. So I do think in that one, that's a little more challenging. And, I think sometimes like, kids, what is the church you're going to like? Is the word being taught? Is it engaging of younger families? Again, I think you go the opposite end where we just, and I'm talking about this in a few weeks, but like, Yeah.
Yeah, it just becomes entertainment. And then kids start to buy. If you do that, I think by the time they're 16, 17, 18, kids are very perceptive and they see through that.
Yeah,
and
they
become disengaged then. And so then it's just, it becomes harder. Like, it's just, why do I even go? It doesn't really make a difference.
Why would I go to the church and hear music that's kind of like a nightclub when it's way better at the nightclub?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, and we can dance more. So
there
you go.
I know.
So, all right, so go, be committed. Last question we received. Yeah, this is a question that somebody asked you. How do you know if you're in God's will? That's a great question. I think I'll start. I think one, we tend to overcomplicate this because we think that God's will is like this, like if there's two choices, A or B. One is definitely God's will, one's not. And if I choose B,
you have chosen wisely.
I'm out of His will for the rest of my life.
You have chosen poorly.
Yeah, there you go. I'm out of His will for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
One thing that it's harder because it's a little more nebulous, but I mean, Paul says in Romans 12, Paul writes, "Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and then you will know God's will, His good, acceptable, and perfect will." So God's will, His overall will, is for you to know Him, to be in relationship with Him, and to make Him known. So everything else I feel underneath that is more of a fleshing out what that looks like for your life.
Yeah.
But if you are not renewing your mind in the truth, you will not know His will.
Yeah.
Because His will is there. But His promise is when we seek Him, we'll know.
Yeah. Howard Hendricks says 95% of the will of God is revealed in the scriptures. 5% is not. Why do we obsess about the 5% that is not? And I think, really doing the things. This is what I try to, often say about people who are struggling with this is like, are you doing the things you know to do?
Right.
And typically they're not. And here's why that's a big deal, is because there's a peace that comes from doing what you know to do that is right. In the end of James chapter 1, he says that's a passage on trials, right? And he's talking about seeking wisdom and he's talking about how worldly possessions and winds fade away. And at the end he says, but the man who looks at the law of liberty and is intent on doing it, he will be blessed in whatever he does.
Yeah.
And I really take that and understand that as there's such great freedom in the choices that we make in our life, in the areas where they're not clearly defined. And if we're the kind of man or woman that God wants us to be, and primarily we're looking to His word, trusting in Him with all our heart, as He says in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, He'll make your paths straight. I think there's multiple paths, and He's going to make whichever one you're choosing straight. So this is how I would sum this up.
Yeah.
Following your heart is bad advice.
Such bad advice.
However, if somebody comes to me and they say, I've prayed and prayed and prayed, and I'm studying the word, and I'm seeking the word, and I'm seeking counsel on this, then I say, follow your heart.
Yeah, because it's renewed.
Yeah. You're at this point, do what you think is going to bring the most glory and honor to God, and His great. And I'll tell you this again, we can get in theological heresy here if we're not careful, but what I have found is it is quite possible that I have made the wrong decision, if you want to use that word.
Yeah.
But that God's grace covers me because my intent was
to
His
honor
word.
Him.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
so
we
I
definitely
wouldn't
get
stress
talk about
about it.
that.
I wouldn't stress
agree.
about it.
Like you just have to say, Lord, I'm trusting You. I am seeking You, and I just show me.
And I think it's easier to second guess those decisions when you don't have earthly results, right? Like both of us agonized over coming here.
Yeah.
When I mean that, we loved the churches we're at.
Right.
And I think had it been tough here,
you'd be like,
we would have both been like, oh, maybe I made the wrong decision. But because it's been good, we don't think that. But the truth is that's not the measure either. My heart was trying to discern the Lord's will.
Yes, absolutely. That's good. So, hey, those are some questions we received this past week. We want more questions. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. So, send us questions. Please do send us a text if you've got a phone numbers. We're not putting those out there, but you can send us an email. You can send us a message on Facebook, a comment on YouTube.
555.
There you go. So 850-555. So here we go. We're going to wrap today up with a little game, and we may have to make this a 2-part game because of time.
Okay.
Because I got a great response. So we're going to play a little game that some of you have probably played before. It's called Two Truths and a Lie. But I have polled our staff members to see how well James knows random trivia facts about the staff. Now, before we go on, I just want to say, if you get every one of these wrong, it just goes to show you know the important stuff. You know
Thank you for making your pastor look good. Thank you for making me look good.
So because some of these I was like, I don't think I would get these right either. So all right, and I decided based on the suggestion that not only I'm not gonna tell you who sent it in. So you're first gonna have to guess which staff member this is.
Got it.
And then you're gonna have to guess which one is a lie. So I think some will be a little easier than others. So the first one is this, and then some of their clues actually kind of narrow it down. So first one is, I was born at home and named by my grandmother. I went ziplining in my 60s. Track was my favorite sport in high school. Well,
that's probably... Well, based on the age, it's either Brenda or Charlotte. So my guess would be Charlotte. I meant Brenda.
You're correct. Good job.
My guess is that she was born at home and named by her grandmother.
So you have to pick the lie. 2 are true, 1's a lie. So that I will help you out. Again? That one is true. Yeah. Track was my favorite sport in high school.
I think she did not go ziplining. I didn't think she goes.
So that was my gut response too, but she did go ziplining in her 60s. This is Brenda Cook, our receptionist, and if you know her, she is just a gem, and everyone loves her. She does so much for so many people. Actually, she says the lie is, and it was like, I feel like Brenda, and knowing Brenda too, she's probably already like asked the Lord for forgiveness for giving a lie in this game.
That's good.
Track was her favorite sport. She said actually softball was her favorite sport. And she played softball and she ran track, and she was the second fastest girl on the track team.
I believe it.
I said, that's Brenda. I love it. So I got to learn some information. So you get half a point on that because you got the person.
I got the person.
All right. So the next is, I'm not going to tell you who this is. You have to guess, but again, the clue will narrow it down to some. My wife was my first girlfriend. I played trumpet in middle school and high school. My wife and I didn't kiss until our wedding day.
Michael Van Zant.
Yeah, you got it right, dude. Good job.
And yeah, I'm going to guess that he did not play trumpet.
He did play trumpet in middle school and high school. Dana was his first girlfriend.
I figured that.
But they did not wait till their wedding day to kiss.
Scandalous. I know. Scandalous, Van Zant.
It was after they were engaged.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's great.
Isn't that funny?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, man. So I love it. All right. So, next is I gotta scroll up. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. I played golf with a pro football player. I ran into a famous rock star in Las Vegas. I was behind a famous rapper at a Zaxby's drive-thru.
Well, this is strange.
There's a theme. There's famous people.
Ward Van Steenberg.
That is not correct.
Oh, man. Steve Renna.
Not correct. One more guess and I'll just tell you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Alec.
Oh, okay.
Alec.
Okay.
Right,
he played golf?
Alec Ammons.
He's played golf before?
Our minister's students. Yeah, he's played golf before.
Okay.
So I just helped you
maybe
out.
I was going to say, or maybe that was the lie.
I didn't really tell you because it's all in the details.
What was the middle one?
Played golf with a pro football player. Ran into a famous rock star in Las Vegas.
That just seems like a lie.
That
just seems so made up.
A famous rapper at Zaxby's. And you are correct. He did not run into a famous rock star. He actually ran into a rapper.
Who was the rapper?
So the rapper that he met at Zaxby or was behind at Zaxby's was Missy Elliott. The football player he played golf with was Evan Oglesby, former defensive back for the Cowboys, Ravens, Dolphins.
Don't know who that is. Okay.
And in Las Vegas, it wasn't a rock star. It was another rapper. It was Fetty Wap. I'm not sure how to say that, which shows how out of touch I am with that.
That is.
All right.
All right. I'm
Next
Fetty
up.
Wap with this game. I'm just kidding.
All right. We got time for...
We do. We're good.
We got time. All right.
We got
So
more
here we
time.
go. One more. Not going to tell you. I changed my major 7 times during undergraduate work.
Justin Wyatt.
I graduated with a double major in religious studies and leisure sports and tourism. I hammocked next to a bear in the woods in Maryland.
Oh, okay. Not Justin anymore. What in the hammocked next to a bear in the woods in Maryland? Yeah, Mike, Steve Renna, and the middle one's a lie.
No.
Okay. Is it you?
No.
Oh, okay. Who else works for us?
Luca.
Lucas. Okay.
Our minister,
Yeah.
Children, our
Okay.
children's minister. All right. So
Oh, that makes sense.
there you go. So again, changed his major 7 times, double major, religious studies, leisure sports, and
Okay.
tourism, hammocked next to a bear in Maryland.
Well, Lucas does not like sports at all, so I'm very surprised if that's true. So I'm going to call that one the lie.
It is. However, he minored in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
So there
Really?
you go.
Okay.
It was, he majored in religious studies, minored in leisure sports and tourism.
Well, we can't finish without at least you doing your truths and a lie.
Okay. So
I'll know it's you, but that's okay.
Well, I had to think. I was like, what would he not know about me? So mine are related to food.
Oh,
now, it's like a lot of details. Like,
well, when we sit in this room for 40 hours a week together,
that's right, and just talk into microphones.
Yes, you only get 10% of it.
That's right. So I have
1%.
we'll come back to this game. I'm going to save the ones we haven't had time for because I've got several more.
Another day.
And so mine. Here you go. Ready?
Okay.
Mine's just going to revolve around food.
Okay.
I have eaten eel. I have eaten
you have.
dog. I have
you
eaten
probably have.
octopus.
I would say that you haven't eaten octopus.
Yay, you're right.
Yeah,
I've eaten the others.
Yeah, eel in America.
No, I ate eel in Korea.
You haven't eaten eel in America?
It was terrible.
You can eat eel.
I'm not a
eel roll.
I was not a I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking like in Korea, like I went to a restaurant with some college students that I was working with when I was there with IMB, and they're like, and I at the time really didn't like seafood at all. Like shrimp was about the limit. And you walk in and literally like the eels are in a tank in the front and they're like and they bring it out and they cook it in front of you. Like I'm talking like the stew that we're having is like you can see like the eel is still moving as it's cooking and then it's done. It was hard.
Okay.
I was like, Jesus, help me get this food down.
All right, my turn.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I've
I'm ready.
been arrested. I'm related to George Washington. And I told Rick Warren I didn't want to take a picture with him.
All right. You were arrested in China on a mission trip, or I think it's China.
Yes, you're right.
I can absolutely see you telling Rick Warren that you didn't want to take a picture with him, so you're not related to George Washington.
So I'm actually related to George Washington.
Oh, how cool.
I didn't tell Rick Warren I didn't want to take a picture with him, but somebody said, "Do you want a picture?" And he looked at me and I said, "No, I'm good."
That's so funny.
They're all really technically true.
That's so funny. Well, yeah. And you're related to George Washington, so you cannot tell a lie, right?
Oh,
there you go.
wow.
Hey,
wow.
so we'll save the rest for next time because I think for our listeners appreciate getting to know our staff a little bit more too. They're not just these amazing faces you see on Sundays and Wednesdays, but they're real people with real experiences and real lives. Yeah. So, hey, again, we want your questions. We want you to send in stuff that you think would be interesting to talk about. Maybe it's something you've thought of, or it's a question that someone came to you with and you thought, hey, I answered it this way. Do you have anything else you'd add? We want those. So please send those to us. We would love to answer.
Like, how can we trust the Bible when men with a white complexion were involved in the process at all, right?
Oh, wow. The original signers.
Yes.
Wait, that was the Constitution.
Declaration.
Ding.
We're actually white men.
The offensive bell just went off again. Ding.
Just think that's the new narrative on that.
That's so true.
Yeah, I know.
All
we
right.
really should have a ding.
That's right. I'm going to have a bell. Ding. Yeah. All right. Hey, thank you so much for listening. Please send us questions and please tune in next time.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.